Our mission at SD Bullion is clear: the lowest cost gold and silver available online. While we do not have pretty blue boxes, free shipping, 4% credit card fees, or glamorous gold and silver infomercials, SD Bullion has the lowest prices that may save you hundreds on your next order. So before you make your next investment, do the math and join the over 15,000 new customers who have recently made the switch to SD Bullion. Why pay more?
Mentioning that the dollar is at national security risk, you've talked about before about this idea of an economic reset, and the fall of the dollar really is a very important part of this economic reset that you talk about. I was thinking for the rest of the interview, we could discuss more specifics about the economic reset. So before we get into more specifics about the economic reset, for our new viewers, did you want to give us an overview of what the economic reset is, some of its recent history, and some of the deception and delays surrounding it?
It was probably around late 2013 that the world superpowers, and I'm talking about, England, U.S., Germany, France, China, and Russia, they all had a big powwow and said, the dollar cannot continue to be the global reserve currency. You can't have QE, which is quantitative easing, which is bond purchase program off printed money. You can't have unsterilized hypermonetary inflation for the global reserve currency. And the stupidity and recklessness of that, combined with the lack of the public perception that it is folly, highlights the ignorance in the Western world as to what money and monetary policy is. You cannot print money on the global reserve currency. You can't do that. That's putting Zimbabwe on a global scale. You can't do that. You can't undermine Korea's savings account in the form of treasuries. Countries don't just save treasuries to buy crude oil. They save treasuries to serve as the foundation for their banking system, and you can't undermine that with hyperinflation of the same object. You can't do that. You wreck the global economy. You cause capital destruction on a global scale, and that is precisely why the global economy is not recovering. We're attacking the capital. So these major nations of the world got together in 2013 and decided that we needed a transition to be safe and smooth to get away from the dollar as the currency for global reserve. And that's not a simple task, Eli. It's like saying, well, we need to go from a deeply corrupt and ingrained dollar to a deeply safe and deeply honest system based on gold and integrate trade and banking at the same time. You can't do that quickly. So they came up with a multiple-step program, and the U.S. signed on it in December of 2013. And then, like all treaties for the U.S. government, we violated it. And we did so in February by having the Ukraine war, where we stole their 33 tons of gold. That bought some more time. But more importantly, we cut off the umbilical cord between Russia and Western Europe for energy supply, because we don't want that marriage to happen. We're willing even to have Western Europe's economy wrecked just so they don't team up with Russia. So there's a lot of deception involved in this reset. Way too much attention was paid to the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnam dong. And that game has been played. Geithner, Paulson, Hillary Clinton, they've already cashed in. That was 6 months ago. That game's over. So anyone who's hanging on to Iraqi dinar, you're a knucklehead. You missed the whole game there and the entire fraud. That was the deception regarding. They claimed that, well, we're going to have to make some adjustments to many, many minor currencies in the world. Well, yeah, but the main focus is the major currencies of the world. The currency reset is a grand misnomer, and I find the word is misused a lot. Misnomer means false name. It's that simple, false name. The global currency reset is really a multi-stage procedure toward reinstalling the gold standard. That's what the reset is. Return to the gold standard and all the different procedural steps that lead to it. So the United States had a delay. We figured, hey, they'll offer Ukraine war and disrupt everything and just kind of make a mess in Europe and basically take a grand crap in the European Union. You know, we've seen recently the crap stirred up with the Syrian refugees, who are mostly not Syrian. They're from Morocco, they're from Algeria, they're from Libya, they're from all over the place. And to qualify, you need a criminal record. So it's like a macro case of the Mariel, Cuba dumping of prisoners on South Florida. Okay, so there's a lot of deception, a lot of nastiness, and, you know, wherever the U.S. government has its hand, expect something to be destroyed and people to die. And that's what's going on right now in Europe. So the global currency reset has a lot of events. And think of it as like a preparatory events. You need to... We got a grand event as a climax, but you can't have the climax unless all the preparation is made in the preliminary steps. It's hard to come up with an analogy for this because it is so big. We're talking about removal of the dollar as global reserve currency. We're talking about an ending of the dollar being used both as a domestic currency in the United States and the reserve currency in foreign banking systems. We're talking about a removal of that and all of its paper, toilet paper, confetti aspects, and integration of an honest system. The biggest shocks will come to the countries that have the biggest deficits and the biggest absence of industry. And that's precisely the United States. So the United States has been interfering and delaying with its integration because I call it a slipping into the third world. The United States has a $1 trillion federal deficit every year. I forecast that in 2009, and that's turned out to be a correct forecast. Every year, $1 trillion. But every year they come up with some doctored nonsense and say it's only $550 billion this year, only $580 billion this year, only $600 billion this year. Bunch of nonsense. Remove the adjustments and you see the trillion. The United States has an annual, roughly $500 billion trade deficit. If you have an honest, legitimate currency for just the U.S. nation used on a domestic basis only, you're going to see radical sequence of devaluation, I think on the order of 80% in maybe 3 or 4 steps. That's what the U.S. faces with the reset. So naturally they want to delay it. They don't want to see import inflation of 200% on prices. They don't want to see a grand disruption where the U.S. has to start working overtime to relieve its deficits, both trade and federal. That's government and, business as an economy. They don't want to have to relieve that because to relieve it, you have to start exporting everything under the sun, and that results in shortages. Take a look at Venezuela. They have shortages in rice, beans, toilet paper, and condoms. That's Venezuela. They had a 74% currency devaluation in 2 steps. Bang, bang. I think it was around the year 2013, right after Chavez died, or was killed, or was murdered, or disappeared, or was buried, or you get the point. Okay, so there are a lot of events associated with this, Eli, and they're not simple. And there are a lot of consequences that happen. Like some nations will sit together and they say, well, this happened, that happened, that happened, and this is coming, so let's do A, B, and C. Okay, there are consequences for starting this grand global movement. And I think it's going to be a major theme this year. Got several things that have already begun, several things that are in motion, several things that are announced as soon, and it's exciting. It's like being at a boring play, and the first 3 acts are done, and finally, okay, acts 4, 5, and 6 are happening now, and this is where big things are happening. So that's my introduction. I hope it all makes sense. It's a summary. It's not adequate by any means, but it's a good overview, I think. And there's a lot more deception in there. There's a lot more battling and posturing in there. And most of that is going on between the United States and China. Now, there's certainly the Russian sanctions and the reverse sanctions, food bans. That's big activity. But the main events are between China and the United States. And Russia is right behind China with full support on almost everything they're doing, with some complementary activity that reinforces the Chinese actions.
Click here to subscribe for free so you will be notified when more of this interview is released. Or click over here to watch the full interview now. This video was brought to you by ReluctantPreppers.com. Click here to watch Reluctant Preppers interview with Jim Willie, where Jim Willie reveals that the elite are stashing gold while bashing it in the press.